So when you place a bet with a bookmaker, like Bet365 for example, you're probably familiar with the fact that over the long term, you will lose money. And that is because the odds that they give you don't reflect the true probabilities. And the difference between those two is what they make in money from you when you place a bet with them. However, there are a couple of other ways in which bookmakers will make money from you, even if you don't place a bet. And if you want to find out what that is, then just watch the rest of this video. So the betting industry doesn't have a great reputation. And one of the key underlying reasons why this is the case is that the way that they make money is by you losing it. There's a fundamental transfer when you lose money straight into their hands, and that's pretty much the way that they like it. And the key way that they do that is they set up odds that don't reflect the true chance of something happening. They net the money between the two. But of course, they also have a terrible reputation for paying out when something goes unexpectedly in the punter's favour. So let's say that you make a big win or you manage to rack up some money in your account. Very often, a lot of bookmakers will use every trick in the book to avoid paying out. And typically, they will refer to terms and conditions. They will say, well, we would pay you out, but unfortunately, section 17A, blah, 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 and they quote some sort of obscure terms and conditions to say, and that is why we can't pay you out. So that's another reason why the industry doesn't have a great reputation. And you sign up to anybody and you have to agree to a whole set of incredible terms and conditions that cover just about absolutely every single possible outcome. I'm going to scroll through some terms and conditions here from Bet365, and you can see that there are an awful lot of terms and conditions within here. And this is very similar across every single bookmaker, sportsbook, or anything to do with the betting industry. They have reams and reams of terms and conditions, ways that they can refuse to pay you out. However, when you look at any of these terms and conditions, there's one little clause in there that I think you should be aware of. So there are two big things I want to talk about in this video. The second one is coming up in a second, which I think will really surprise you. But the first one is directly related to terms and conditions. And if you've signed up with any particular bookmaker, you will find that this clause is within those terms and conditions. A lot of people aren't aware that it actually exists, but it's directly related to when the government investigated and looked at inactive betting accounts or accounts that had not collected winnings, because a surprising number of accounts, especially to do with the lottery and other areas, prizes do not get claimed. And when we're talking about betting accounts, a lot of betting accounts end up remaining dormant for any number of particular reasons, and they're left with a small cash balance within that particular account. Now, what happened after the government sort of indicated that they were going to start legislating for this sort of thing? A lot of the terms and conditions changed with bookmakers and sportsbook to include a section within there about dormant accounts. And if you actually look in any of those terms and conditions, you will find a section in there about dormant accounts. And the treatment of those dormant accounts varies between one bookmaker and another. I think it was Victor that I looked at when I looked at the particular terms that they had, where they basically said that if they couldn't contact you and there was nothing that they could do, then they would donate the money to charity. But when you look at a lot of these terms with a lot of bookmakers, what they will actually do is either take the money back, or they will levy an account inactivity fee, or they will levy a fee on it. It's usually about sort of £5 a month, or some people do £5 or 5%, whichever is the greater. But basically at the end of about 20 months, your account would be completely evacuated of money. And because they charge it as a fee, they get to keep that money completely. So yeah, if you have an inactive or a dormant account, according to the terms and conditions that you've signed up to, then actually the bookmaker has the right, the legal right, to actually take that money back. The treatment of it varies from one account to another. I actually did some research on this and was going to put it on the video, and I thought, no, that's going to be way too long. But individual companies vary in terms of how they levy a dormancy or an account inactivity fee. And then, like I've pointed out, some actually give it to charity, but the vast majority don't. They just charge you a fee and take that money for themselves. So dormant accounts or inactivity fees is one way that bookmakers can make money from you, even if you don't bet. If you open an account and you forget about it, and then you change email address or whatever, all of those things, then basically you just end up handing the money over to the bookmaker. And you're sort of thinking, well, you know, that can't be much money, can you? Well, the next thing I'm going to show you is going to shock you, because in fact, there are tens of millions of accounts out there. They all have relatively small balances, but ultimately that ends up to a very large amount of money. And there's another way that bookmakers can make money from you, even if you don't bet. So the two main things that I do to make a living are trading and investing. And through my investing career, I read a lot of annual reports. Sounds really boring, but you can actually dig around in an annual report and find out loads of little bits of interesting information. And I do exactly the same on betting companies. And that reveals something really, really interesting, because we've just looked at how, you know, these companies can get money back from dormant accounts. And you're sort of thinking, well, that can't add up to much money. How much money do people actually leave in betting accounts? Well, the fact is, a lot of these companies now have millions or tens of millions of betting accounts, and even a small amount of money soon adds up to an absolutely massive total. And even if the account is active, there's another way that they can make money from you. So let's have a look at the Bet365 accounts and learn exactly how they do that and exactly how much money they are making. So if you want to find out information on a company, what you do is you go to Companies House in the UK and you can search for the company you're interested in, and they will give you all sorts of information about it, the people at the company, any charges against the company that need to be fulfilled, other information. But what we're most interested in is in the accounts, because the accounts will tell us all sorts of information. So you can see that Bet365 filed their accounts on the 7th of January this year, as they do most years, on or around that date. And if we click on the PDF file, we can actually have a look at the full set of accounts. And there's a lot of information in here. So you could sort of endlessly browse enormous amounts of information. I've done that already for you, so we don't have to do that on the video, thank goodness. There are 59 pages in total, but the first page I'm going to show you is on page 24, because this is the balance sheet. This is telling you what the company owns, basically, and what it owes to other people as well. So you can see here that if we look at current assets, then we can actually see that it is owed £760 million. It has investments of 1.2 billion, and it has cash at the bank of about £500 million. There is a lot of money in Bet365. In total, there is about £2.5 billion in current assets. And you can see overall there's a breakdown of other information here as well. But fundamentally speaking, you can see how much cash they have on their actual balance sheet. But, you know, what does that cash represent and so on? We need to dig a bit deeper in order to find that. And whenever I look at a set of accounts, I tend to do it backwards. So that tends to contain most of the information that you're interested in. So if we go to the very end, I'm going to go to page 52. We tend to find at the front of an annual report, you get a summary of everything. But when you go to the back of it, you get notes to the financial statements, which tell you how all of this is built together. And if we look at the notes on Bet365, and we look under creditors, which is basically money that it owes to other people, this is where we find the information that we're looking for. So you can see here trade creditors of nearly £500 million. So this basically is the money that it owes to other people. And you can see there's a note here that is most interesting, which says included in trade creditors is an amount of 432,746,000 in respect of amounts owed due to customers. So this is basically saying this is the amount of money that people have deposited with Bet365, which Bet365 are holding on their behalf, in effect. And the interesting thing about this is if you go onto the Bet365 website, you can see how this all ties together, because it says on their website that they have 90 million customers. And if you look at 90 million customers and you divide this amount by 90 million, it works out at roughly about £5 a piece. Very small individually, but overall that adds up to an absolutely stupendous amount of money. And the interesting thing is that that earns them quite a lot of money as well. So I did some more work to have a look at some of the detail of this particular report. And if we jump to page 27, this gives you a consolidated statement of cash flows. And in here you can see this line, which is interest received. So while it holds money on your behalf, it can actually get interest on that, which is under no obligation to pay you. So you can see that in the year ended 2022, it earned 318,000, whereas last year it earned nearly 13 million. And if you do the maths and you divide that by the trade creditors and other information, that would work out an interest rate of somewhere between 2.5% to 3%, which adds up and is probably about right for a business deposit account. But yeah, basically, if you have money deposited with Bet365, as 90 million people appear to have done, then actually they will be getting the interest on those consolidated savings. And in this particular case, Bet365 have earned about 13 million last year on your deposits. So to reiterate the point, let's have a look at another report, and this is from Flutter. Now, they are a listed company, and therefore their report sort of almost reads more like a sales pitch, and that's because it's there to interest potential investors and, you know, talk up various aspects of the company. And in fact, this annual report is a whopping 304 pages long. But therefore it does give more information about client funds. So if we go all the way down to page 243 of this report, you can actually see that Flutter Group have listed under this section customer balances. So you can actually see that as a group as a whole, the amount of money that they have as customer deposits is 1.3 billion. So much bigger than Bet365, but obviously there are a range of companies under the Flutter umbrella now. But you can see it's pretty much doubled in the last year. So if we dig a bit deeper into the report, you can see that they actually break out how much money is held by Betfair itself as customer deposits. You can see here it's 366 million, which is up a bit on last year. And it actually tells you where they put that money. They don't put it into a savings account. They actually invest it in short duration corporate and government bonds. So of course you can do this for any company. If we look at Entain, who are also listed and have a massive annual report, you can see Entain look after Ladbrokes, Coral, BetMGM, and various other brands. So you can see they've got quite a significant number of different brands available. But they also have large amounts of money on their balance sheet. In their annual report on page 207 out of 240, you can see cash and short-term investments of 650 million, including customer funds. They do mention on here customer balances as a liability as well, so we'd have to dig a bit deeper. But of course, you know, I could do this for every company. I'm sure you wouldn't be interested in that. The key point here is just how much money these companies are holding of your cash. So when you dig underneath a lot of these companies, one of the things that you will realise is that even though the individual deposits will be quite small, when they aggregate all of that money together, it turns into billions. Billions that they can invest, earn interest on, and that is an important part of their business model. They can make millions from investing the money that you have deposited. The interesting thing is, in the insurance industry, they do a similar thing. They take a premium up front to pay out in the future, and they get your money, which they can also invest. It's called a float in the insurance industry. And a similar sort of thing happens within the betting market. They've got all these billions of pounds from all of these accounts that they haven't paid out on yet, and they can earn interest on it, and you won't see a penny. So when you bet with a bookmaker, it's really heavily stacked against you. They offer odds that don't reflect the true chance of something happening. They make a lot of money that way. If you do happen to win against them, there's a whole set of terms and conditions that they could use in order to avoid a payout. If you fall into one of those very specific terms that they have that you've agreed to when you signed up to the account, they may be able to avoid paying you out. But worse than that, if you have any money in your account, they actually denote upon themselves the right to actually take that cash if your account remains inactive. And if that's not bad enough, when you deposit small amounts in a bookmaker, then they actually aggregate all of those funds together, they invest them and make money off of you. So even if you don't place a bet, the bookmaker will still make money from you.